I'm waiting for a specific number to hit, and then I'm going to get ready to get you all started. So, I don't always do well with these these silences, so we'll give it a second. All right, I think we're ready to start. So hi, my name is Sean Zachariah. I'm the global project manager and lead for our Pride ERGs. I want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for sticking it out the whole week. And this is the final workshop of your week. Thank you for letting us be your final workshop. We've got a great presentation here today. We've got team members from around the globe to talk about exporting your rainbow overseas. Just quick housekeeping. We've got, if you have a question, please put them in the polls on the Pathable site. We'll be monitoring what's happening in the chat, but if you have a specific question, please make sure you've got it in the polls, and that's what I'll be monitoring throughout the session. I'll be your moderator today. So Angel, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, appreciate it. In our ever social media world, I want to make sure that you can share the experience that you have today, make sure you include the hashtags below. And also, if you want to learn more about Dell Technologies and the work that we do, please follow at Life at Dell, or follow the hashtags Pride at Dell and our hashtag Be Yourself, which is on our t-shirts, which I don't know if you all can see how wonderful those are. All right, so just a quick introduction of our panelists. Again, my name is Sean Zachariah. I'm here in Austin, Texas, or Round Rock, Texas. We've got Nikki Gibson, our wonderful North America lead, who just won an Audi Award today. So we're also very, very, very proud of her. We've got Shane Mills out of Hyderabad, India, who is also our APJC co-lead for our Pride ERG. And we have Maros, also out of Bratislava, who's our Bratislava site lead as well. And then Angel Medina, who is out of Panama. He's our LATAM lead, and he will he'll be driving the presentation today. So just want to welcome you, introducing you to your panelists today. So let's go to the next slide. Just a quick of what we're going to expect today. We're going to go over some international case studies. We'll talk to you about a toolkit that you could possibly use. We'll talk to you about business case assessments and how you can create your own business case. We'll talk about the 2030 Dell Technologies Moonshot Goals. And then finally, we'll talk how to make a difference in your own environment. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the global state. So each of the folks are going to talk about their areas and do a quick review. And we'll start with Nikki Gibson.
Hi, thank you, Sean. So this slide is an amazing slide, and you'll see that all of us, or each of us on the panel today, will be presenting initially for each of our regions. Something I'm very proud of here in North America, we have 10 official chapters around the United States. We're very close to launching a chapter in Canada. We hope that we'll be able to do that by the end of this year. But this slide represents where we have chapters and what the local rights and protections are in those areas. So when you look at where we have chapters, one of the key things that we look at Dell when we're looking at where we're going to set up new chapters, we look at where we have pockets of team members that are engaged and interested in getting engaged in the local community and interested in leading. Obviously, we need strong leaders. But we also look at the community engagement and the environment so that we have an idea on how to engage locally in the community. So where can we get involved? How can we be a part of advocacy in different ways that we can engage with business leaders in the local communities? So, when we look at North America in each of the states and cities where we have chapters, this slide kind of gives you a snapshot of what the local policies are and what the local practices are. You'll notice that, in the United States, it's great to live in California, and it's great to live in New England, the Massachusetts area. If you're a member of the LGBT community, they're very open in those areas, but we still have a lot of work to do. If you look at the southern states, so Tennessee, which is where I'm based, not far from Nashville, in North Carolina and Texas, we have some work to do. We're protected as a community with respect to marriage equality, thankfully, but we've got lots of work to do in some of the other areas. For example, second parent adoption and things like that. We've got a lot of work that we can do. And in Tennessee and in Texas, we work with organizations like the Tennessee Equality Project and Equality Texas to be able to engage and participate in local lobbying activities and to meet with local policymakers to help fight some of the bills that are not supportive of our community. We are fortunate that we have sites. We are fortunate that where we have sites, rather, in the southern states, we have cities where they're very open and welcoming, like Nashville, for example, and Austin. I think that, really there's a great opportunity to really encourage folks who live and work in southern states to be involved and to advocate and to participate in lobby activities. I encourage everybody to join the Southern States event that Out and Equal has on December the 4th to learn about some of the key things that companies in southern states are doing, and then what we can do in some of these areas to help better the environment for our community. Thanks, Sean.
Excellent. Now we'll go to Shane Mills.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to walk you through west to east. The entire APJ region might be sleeping by now, but yes, I'm awake here to talk about our region. And thank you all for joining in for this last hour. I would be so happy to take a visa to Australia, but I would be so scared to go to Malaysia, and so as Singapore. It's in this next gen and in this pandemic, with so many changes, and we are so surprised that we have countries which are still struggling for basic human rights. And today, we as ERG leaders can bring forth a major change. I'm so happy to tell that in APJ, we have 6 chapters, and doing amazing work, for the country. Now, just because Australia is all green, that doesn't mean they are all sitting happy and hibernating. There is still an ERG requirement there because there is a change in law. But as a leader, you need to make changes in the society and sensitization so that people can imbibe and understand what exactly this is, what our culture is. People are not aware. We all assume things. And that's what we ERG leaders are there to break these assumptions. It's so, in India, I'm so happy that, I'm green, but look at my others. If I turn and look at the other side, it's orange, red, which means that there are challenges. And what I can do as an ERG leader to make that green is, empower, speak up, be the voice, be the change, join organization, pride marches, panel discussions, sensitization is what is required. And that's what I do as an activist. And so you could also do. Similarly in Taiwan, I'm so happy to see Taiwan, having green blocks everywhere. But again, adoption. Why can't I have adoption? Why can't I have a child? Basic, what's my future? Who will take care of me? As heterosexuals, we can think about it. Why can't we think as homosexuals? We are just humans. So it's very important that we understand what our local, legal laws talk about, so that as leaders, we know where to act, how to act. It's very important that we can jump. For example, for me, being a pride activist and a transgender activist, my next target is in India is marriage rights, because I'm living a relationship for 15 years, but I'm not legally married. But yes, but it says I can be homosexual, I can be an LGBT, but it doesn't allow me to choose a partner. So there's so much of change that we can do, but yes, be there, be a change. It's very important, to know your local rights and to know what you can do as an activist. You can combine those two and you can be the change. And Maros, back to you for EMEA.
Thank you very much. I hope all of you can hear me. I had some technical issues before, but I guess it's resolved. So welcome to EMEA. And I very much saying that welcome to Europe, right? And let me just comment on this one, because to represent or maybe comment on EMEA statistics and to show the full and true EMEA map, we would be seeing the full and very big rainbow bubble somewhere by the end of maybe Central or Western Europe, and the full Africa, and I guess the whole Eastern Europe would be just blank, right? That's statistic, and that's an issue itself, right? And it's showing itself. I'm here representing Slovakia. Slovakia is the dot the most to your right on the map, and it shows itself in many colors, right? One of them is that pride chapters are not even present on particular sites. Mainly I can comment on Eastern Europe, right? But in geopolitical sense, there was and always was a clash, even historical clash, in between some of the states within Europe, right? You might be calling out that sometimes this might be, or often this is the case, that when it's resolved within the European Union. But then I'm here yet representing some kind of, or what I call just for myself, a clashing or maybe a straggling region in between maybe Eastern Europe and Western Europe, right? So what you're seeing in front of yourselves here is that Central Europe, and you might be hearing a lot from Poland, right? LGBTQ free zones, from Hungary. They're very restrictive legislations towards trans people, for example, now. So this is the regions that is struggling a bit, but at the same time, if you look at the that part of the picture that is quite nice to show, it's a lot of green in here. But I guess that if there would be more sites, normal sites, there are sites, but if there would be more chapters, pride chapters in Eastern Europe, we would be seeing definitely a very different colors. This is also something that I consider quite now as a big discussion, as a big dynamic and live discussion in between the chapters and pride leaders in EMEA to kind of show these differences and what can very easily happen with just maybe one, maybe more conservative political representatives, right? Then other thing that I wanted to comment is that we are very happy to have a chapter in Israel, and we are getting a lot of positive content around that. But we are still hoping that a part of the strategy for the whole EMEA region, it's still going to be an expansion to the Central or Eastern Europe. So then just to comment on what you're seeing in front of yourself. So the list of the countries might be seeming quite nice, right? The only thing that maybe is striking your eye, and the logic behind Slovakia being a bit more colorful, and maybe the countries to the east are more colorful as such, is Italy. Italy is the last of the founding European nations that still does not have marriage equality as its full, right? So this is often called out on many international forums. I don't know, and I don't think it's going to be addressed at all, but we will see, and we hope for the best. So, and then maybe a conservative approach, or more of a conservative approach, even within those most tolerant European nations, is with blood donations, right? And then conversion therapies. But just to remark, the conversion therapy discussion, or I mean the societal discussion, right, as a regional discussion, is not that huge as maybe in the US. That's kind of a contradiction that I needed to call out, because even when these countries are not green as such in conversion therapy list, they are still just not defining this because they don't feel the need to define it, because the practice of conversion therapy is not that much of a part of very public discussion as it is in the US. So thanks. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Maurice. So just to tell you a little bit about LATAM. So if you have offices or you're planning to expand chapters in Latin America, there are certain things that you need to consider. Unlike EMEA, where most of the countries and the locations are very progressive, or APJC, where most of the countries and the locations are very conservative, LATAM is in some sort of in-between limbo. You have countries like Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Uruguay. that have a relatively strong LGBT protective legislation, you still face a conservative social view. So you probably get some feedback from the people saying, hey, you know, we know this, that we respect, we don't discriminate. So some of the opportunities that you might have there will be, for example, cross-functional collaborations with other companies. You will definitely will need to work and reinforce the message with the leaders in your different site, and of course, you know, support and help social communities or social impact work that you have in the area. And then you have countries like Brazil and Mexico, where there is a medium level or very limited LGBTQ legislation support. However, this is mostly in big cities, and they still face high level of discriminations and violence on a social level, especially because of the strong religious and conservative views that they have in those countries. And Brazil particularly has one of the highest transgender murder rates in the world. So some things that you need to consider, opportunities that you might have there, you know, work on your internal and external education and awareness campaigns, and also empower employees to become, you know, leaders externally by giving them those opportunities and to development programs. And then finally, we have countries like Costa Rica, Panama, Peru, and other less progressive locations where they're just starting. They're still facing a high level of discrimination at some point and violence, and they don't have a legislation structure. So there you need to go back to basics, you know, work on your internal awareness, make sure that every team member is aware of why this is so important, work on leadership trainings, and even go back to ensure that they have the basic benefit packages in those locations. And something important to mention, for example, if you have offices in places like the Caribbean, for example, you need to consider that there are many countries in there that prohibit same-sex conduct. So always keep that in mind, you know, keep the safety of your team members and on top of your mind, and take realistic actions on where, what, and how you can deploy different chapters there. So with that, I will pass it over to Sean. And we
Thank you.
can continue.
Thanks, Angel. You know, I'm looking at all the kind of questions that are coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about how those charts were created in a minute, and I think, you know, there, as we talk about it, you'll see there's a lot of understanding your own area to create those charts. So definitely, I'm seeing some of those as questions. But let's talk about the international case study. So what we're talking about here is, what did each of you, and so we'll start kind of going through the regions. What has your journey been? And kind of how did you expand and how did you grow, and kind of how do we go from there? So let's start with Nikki Gibson with North America.
All right, thanks, Sean. So for us in North America, our Dell's employee resource groups really started in North America at our central headquarters in Texas. So in 2002, we launched 4 employee resource groups. We launched Pride, we launched our women's networking group, our Black networking group, and our Asians in Actions group. And our executive sponsor for Pride, Eric Day, who is one of the key reasons why Pride was one of those earliest launched employee resource groups. So thank you, Eric, for always being an advocate for us. In 2004, Dell received its first 100 score from HRC. This is something we are extremely proud of. And then we went outside of corporate headquarters in 2008, and we allowed some of our other locations in the United States, like Nashville and Oklahoma City, launch ERGs. And that was very pivotal for us to be outside of corporate headquarters and launching employee resource groups. So you might remember that I shared that I'm based in Tennessee and about an hour east of Nashville. So I had the opportunity and the privilege to launch the Tennessee chapter for Pride, which was amazing. But as you can imagine, being in a southern state, it was also created some opportunities for us. This was also the year that we were first at Out and Equal and sponsored Out and Equal, and that summit was in Dallas. In 2016, we received the Out and Equal Workplace Excellence Award for our ERG work, and this was really across so many platforms. So we were recognized for our transgender toolkit. We were recognized for how we're partnering with the benefits organization, ensuring that we have the right benefits in place to include domestic partner benefits at the time. So this really looked at and honored us for a lot of the things that we were doing from a policy and a programs perspective internally at Dell. In 2017, we launched the Utah and North Carolina chapters. In 2018, we launched our chapter in California. In 2019, we launched Seattle and New England. We also shifted to our 4-pillar model with respect to ERGs. And this is something that all of our ERGs are held accountable for as far as how we're driving initiatives and we're making a difference within the company. And for Pride, I believe that this was pivotal for us because it gave us an opportunity to really hone in on what our initiatives were going to be. And our focus we really pivoted at that moment, I believe, from an ERG that had great networking events that could really come together as a group and have fun and do some incredible things. But our focus really shifted into how are we going to give back to our company and really make a difference internally and externally in the communities where we have chapters. We received our first Community Partner Award from D&I in 2019 as well. We're very excited about that. And then that was also the year that Dell signed the HRC Business Coalition in several different opportunities to engage in the community in 2019 to support advocacy. So in 2020, we launched chapters in Philadelphia and Atlanta, and we also launched our remote chapter in August of this year, and this has been incredible. We knew we had a very large contingency of Pride members who were outside of cities that actually had chapters, so launching a remote chapter for us was huge, and we were very excited to be able to do that. And then we also signed, again, some business coalitions this year. So we were a part of the Virginia Coalition, the Nashville Coalition that was done, Keeping Tennessee Open, Freedom for All. We also launched Self-ID this year in June, which is one of the things that I'm most proud about. We launched that in the United States, and I'll be working on launching that globally throughout the rest of our regions over the next couple of years, where we can safely do so and legally do so. And then I was also nominated this year and thankfully so excited to have received the Audi Award. So I think for us, it's a testament of our growth as far as an employee resource group to be recognized from Out and Equal for all these great things. So Sean, would you like to, I think we're passing it over to Shane.
Yep. Yeah, I'm back and I'm still awake.
Good.
I need to keep pinching myself. No, I work for the US time zone, so I'm kind of habituated to this shift timing. And today I'm going to present not a case study, but a success story. Okay, and that's why I choose India to present, because this could be a great learning for all you people who want to know how you can start a Pride chapter. Okay. Now I'm going to take you back my memory lane, which is not too long. It's not my childhood story, but it's just a few years back. And this is when a gay man met a transgender on 2016. We bumped into a Pride march and we realized that we both belong to Dell Technologies. And he works day, I work night. And that's when we share our stories, just like how we all sharing our stories on chat, on virtual. That's when we did this networking. And he said, Shane, you know, what are you doing? You're doing so much of activities across, but what are you doing for the company? I said, I don't know. I just know that there's a global policy. Nobody can touch me. I can be myself. I can do my makeup. Nobody will comment, anything. But what are you doing actually for yourself, you know, for the community? Not everybody is open like you, you know. And then he got me introduced, you know, to this world of diversity. Then he got me introduced to the D&I leaders. He sent an email, an introduction email about Shane. She's a transgender. She belongs to India. And this is what it is. That's when I knew that there is world beyond. I thought it was just taking calls and doing my work, you know. And that's when, you know, after that, we were introduced chalo, what can we do next? We said, look, let's launch a remote chapter, if not legal, because in India back then we had a law which would not allow us to do anything. We were so much frightened, that phobia of going behind bars just to love your partner, imagine, which is still existing in Malaysia and other countries, and that's when we started a remote chapter where we met virtually, just like how we're meeting now. We discussed our issues, what can be done and all that stuff. Then we decided that we actually need a physical chapter where we can come out to the entire country, to the Indian region, and let them know that we do exist and we are humans, and we do need our rights. So we launched our first coffee, event where we could share our thoughts and ideas. And then we realized that we needed a actual training center, somebody who could guide us and let us know how we can do all this. And we found a third party vendor, which gave us a kit called a webinar, where we attended this webinar, understood what are the rules, regulations, and policies and procedures to launch an ERG chapter. And then we connected with our global lead. And fortunately, and I'm so proud to say, we have a leader like Eric Day, who had a mission called Pride Beyond Borders. All you leaders there got to have a vision like this. You need to fly. If you know that a region is not doing something, don't sit there, fly. And he flew 7 seas. He came to India. He met our regional leaders here. And I'm very happy that they did agree to his vision, and we could launch Pride as a chapter in 2018. And that was a historic moment for India in 2 ways, because the same month we knocked down section 377 and it was legal to be gay. And after that, Eric said, Shane, you're doing so much. He heard my story, my struggle. I'm like, I thought it's just me and Sanjay. I was like, do we actually exist in this company? I just did 2 people fighting for rights. Then the door opened to Out and Equal. And I was sad to see that number there, to be very honest. And that's when we connected with Out and Equal. I still remember, when I went to Out and Equal virtually, the first thing I did was took a picture of the all gender washroom, because I wanted that, because I never had that in India. I had so much of issues and concerns using a male washroom during my transition. So that's the first change we did after coming back from Out and Equal. Then I realized that, yes, I attended so many sessions and learned a lot about policies and benefits. Then we launched the same-sex partner benefit. I'm so happy that my partner is covered in insurance. I'm so happy for that, touch wood. Then also we had a transgender task force, a special team. I'm so proud to be associated with this team, because this is only for us transgenders. So where we can, we transgenders have our own issues and our own challenges. So this is one team that we interact, and we talk out any issues and challenges, how to deal with. And it's great. So that's something that never happened before. And I'm glad to be part of that team there. And again, the Out and Equal collaboration still continues. And as far as community concerned, all this gave me a power that I need to do so much of work. And I'm now a part of the Mobera Foundation, doing society work, being a voice, telling my story, and telling the importance of having a Pride chapter so that you can be yourself, that I am, and so you are. So all you leaders, this is a success story. You can do it. It's just that you need to have it in you. Back to Maros or Angel.
It'll be Morris. Thanks, Morris. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Shane. This kind of inspired me to start with the story. So let me start with how I was in the high school, but not really. When I was finishing it, it was 2011, and it was the first Pride March here in Slovakia, and that's the first, march, or maybe this kind of activism that I even heard of right before. As someone who was just leaving high school, I kind of looked at who I was, right? And I was trying to find my own identity. And this pride that was happening in Slovakia for the first time was met with quite a brutal opposition. Stones being thrown and policemen everywhere, and kind of a chaos. And I just remember some kind of emotion that I think that maybe the leaders of Pride in Bratislava had in their mind at that time, when they were founding the first chapter in Bratislava in 2013. It was the emotion of sadness, and maybe very closely linked to a passion or maybe a need to do something, to change something, right? This is why it's always kind of surprising for the people, mainly from other regions, to see that Bratislava was the one to start Pride initiatives in Europe in 2013. We moved on quite a lot. We've moved on to a great representation, for example, in Ireland. There are 3 sites and there are 3 great Pride chapters, which translates to great 3 Pride very active and very vocal groups, right? And though the slide that you're seeing in front of yourselves, it's full of nice memories and photos. Some of them are also personal to me, but what I wanted to add up on that is that it's not really full of partnerships and achievements as such. For a very long time, maybe up till Corona crisis actually, or COVID pandemic, we were acting kind of on our own in our own countries, right? So there is a lot of initiatives, of great partnerships on local levels. For example, just to take an example on maybe UK's Pride partnership with Disney, right? Or the guys in France have a great relationship with the organization that is called Auto Circle, right? So that's also great. On our local levels, we are partnering up with not just NGOs, but also with social care houses, universities, and so on. But then I wanted to underline again that the disparities that there are among the regions, among the countries within the region, are kind of huge ones, right? So I'm here representing the country that is a post-Soviet country. So that's the reason, even for the previous slide of the EMEA that you are seeing. And we can presume, or I believe that the most of the European Union countries would be in green in terms of, we call that homosexual relationships, but sometimes this is referred to as men having sex with men relationships and so on. There's other names for that, right? So this is something that it's green in post-Soviet countries as such, because there was a huge tradition when the Iron Curtain was falling. There was a huge tradition of these countries to kind of identify themselves with these human rights or pro-human rights ideas, right? But apart from that, there's not that much of a progress in these countries as such. To the contrary, in West, this is getting huge buzz, right? I mean, and this is yet another story. When I joined Pride on site here in Bratislava, and then I started leading it, I was very surprised to hear that, for example, the teams within Ireland were able to cooperate with universities, because there were some LGBTQ programs or initiatives, or they were able to call out and have interviews with politicians, right? It's not the case everywhere, right? It's not taken for granted, and it cannot be. But this kind of a whole mix, right, of cultures, languages, and everything, translated into something great. And I must say that there is a very positive thing around Corona, at least one in my head, and it's closely related to Pride. Pride in EMEA has become as a self-standing entity right now. In these months of pandemic, we kind of realized that we don't need to meet to mobilize people, to articulate our ideas, to spread awareness, and to help people by the end of the process, right? So there's been a great cooperation initiatives that are even ongoing right now, which is great. And I guess that 2018 is just the start of something that's translated into something that's really nice. I don't think this is going to be just virtual. I think that I'm going to be meeting these people from other countries in person when this whole chaos is going to end. We hope it's going to end soon. And I know for now that Pride is not just an ERG in Dell for myself. Pride is about forming communities, and pride is about the community that is there for you when other communities or other people around you, it feels like they're more distant, right? Or they just can't be there for you for some reason. And that's kind of a positive message that I wanted to finish off with. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Let's go to Angel.
Thanks, Sean, and thank you, Morris, Shane, and Nikki for sharing your stories. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit again about Latin America. So we have many accomplishments in the region for sure, especially if we talk about the impressive chapters expansion or the fast membership growth. I mean, right now we have 8 chapters that has been fully deployed, which is at least 1 or 2 per year, which is it's a lot of work considering how complex this process is. And we already have over 800 members registered in our tool. But we actually, this whole thing started with a conversation with the North America team. And I want to tell you a little bit about how the job that they have been doing has been very critical and impactful for us in Latin America. So when we were considering, we were moving through the process of having a single base location in Brazil to a multi-chapter structure for the region, we knew that right away that there was no need to reinvent the wheel. So the first thing we did was having a meeting with the global team, with the global leaders, and just to have a better understanding of what were the basics here. They provided a very strong documentations database that included, PowerPoint presentations, templates, surveys, and many other things that we use as a baseline, including our vision and mission, and even a desire state. Like, it gave us a view of where we wanted to be, at least in the next couple of years. Then that was back in 2015, and then the next year in 2016, we were able to, once we were a little bit more established, we went back to the North America team to kind of get guidance on how the LGBTQ community support work in terms of social impact. And we did that because we understood, like, our region had needs at that point, but to be very fair, a lot of our nonprofit organizations, they were not necessarily established or legalized in the government, and we didn't have a social risk strategy at that point to start with. So we took a lot of reference from our peers in North America, and we came up with some ideas where, just to know where to take it from. We included the transgender support, which was not in our radar at that point. So it was really great to include that in our agenda. We also set up several external development programs for people in social risk. We added youth care as part of our initiative, which is something that North America has been extremely successful at. And then the next year, we were able to meet with our compensation and benefits director, or regional director, using the baseline that was created by the global team, by the North America team. We negotiated and guaranteed pretty much that it was properly replicated and applied to all the team members in our regions. Now, let's remember that there are locations where, for example, things like equal marriage is not recognized. So it was extremely helpful to have that background, to have that baseline from the North America team, to simply just say, hey, we want to have the same. How do we do that? Also, when it comes to business partnerships, we took the reference from the chambers of commerce that we had, the different chambers of commerce that we have around North America. We didn't have that specific figure in Latin America, but we found opportunities to collaborate with other companies through different networks, like the Pride Connection Network, like the G Network, or the Pride Alliances that we had across the region. And this also led to bring another relationship with organizations like Out on Equal, where we have summits in Brazil, and we have other activities across different countries, and certifications from the HRC, like we did in Mexico and Brazil. So, and this came from the relationship that was already built from North America. And finally, our recent transition when we talk about the strategy, with this 2020 changes, we decided to launch a virtual chapter. We already have presence in North America with virtual chapters, like, for example, the one that we have in California. So it was just easy to replicate. Like, we have a similar presence there, and we just took the baseline to kind of create virtual spaces for our team members in a smaller offices to participate and engage. And as we're driving all of this, the upcoming plan for us, and this is actually a collaboration that we're doing, side to side with the global team, is to have our trans hiring rates in specifically in Latin America to be very clearly defined and achieved. So this is just a little bit about our story and the things that we have accomplished, especially with the support of North America. Their support has been critical, and they have had a very positive impact with us. So that's the reason why, at least from our side, it's very important to know that you have this global structure, or at least North American structure, to look after you. So with that, again, I'll pass it over to Sean.
Thanks a lot, Angel. That was thank you to Nikki, Maros, Shane, and Angel for providing that view of what their experience was as we developed our Pride ERG chapters globally. So now back to the toolkit overview, country by country. We're going to provide you some information on how you can probably create something similar for your company. I want to make one quick note. We only did them for places where we had sites. So we don't have them all over the globe in every country. So we didn't do a global country by country review. So don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Look at your areas that you have sites at, and then you can use this toolkit there's some references in there as well. So Shane, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Welcome back. Still awake. I need to keep saying that for everyone, Okay, now very important to all you D&I leaders, to you HRs, to you ERG leaders, especially for people who plan to have chapters in other countries, in your own regions, there is a secret mantra, okay? And I'm going to talk about the power of 5, okay? And before I could start that, I would say, we need to have a global policy, especially when you're a multinational company. Okay, we need to have a policy which is abided by all your chapters in all your countries that you are. And not to forget, mainly the 5 important tips. And these 5 tips that I'm going to share today will make it so strong that I'm sure you can fight anybody with this list. Okay, the first most important thing is you need to plan. Everything needs to have a plan. Without a plan, you are going hayway. So plan is something that will make you work structurally. Second is gain visibility from the high level support. It's very important, especially in India. When Modi said, to burn candles, we just burn candles because he's our government. He just told us to burn candles, we burn, because that's the kind of visibility we need to have, especially like for us in my case, it was Eric Day, high level visibility. Second thing is work with your local, with your local employees. Understand, what is the need, how you need to do it. For example, if you're North America and you want to start a chapter in Malaysia, ask them, what's happening, whom to contact, build that contact and then make your plan accordingly, Take local legal advice, very important, especially in countries and states. When I saw Nikki's slide, I was like, I thought now North America would be like all go green. No, that's the assumption we have, but you need to know, because we are still in the dark side. We don't know what's there in the other countries. So study what the legal advice, what the laws are talking about there. And next is communicate the policy effectively. Very, very important, guys. It's like, you'll be left out. Communication, basic, For example, I would say in India, when we had this Pride chapter launch, we sent communications across, we had flyers that went out, about the Pride chapter. When we were legalized, We also send a communication saying that it's legal, so people know what, especially when there are legal changes, you know, especially for transgender, you know, it was okay in India. We have a gender, you know, for transgender, it's denoted with a T. So we had a communication that was sent out to everybody, you know, saying that, you know, that there is this section, you can get a change on your PAN card, like you have your social security, we have PAN card and Aadhaar card. So it's very important that you communicate, and so once you do all this 5, there you are, right? So next slide, please, Angel. So once you're done with this planning, it's very important that you measure, right? It's very important. It's like you cannot bake a cake if you cannot measure if it's 2 cups of, you know, flour and 4 eggs. It's very important that you measure. And similarly, when you want to do something which is so critical, so important, so sensitive, it is very important to measure. And when you measure something like this, for example, we have an assessment, risk assessment, we call this. So it's like applications of LGBTQ related laws and authorities. So how you rate, you want to know how you want to rate it, you know, when you launch something, where they want to rate 1, 2, and 3, you know, 1 being like the most risky one, second is like mixed, and 3 is like go green. It's just like how you do a survey, 5 being the highest and 10 being and 1 being the lowest. Similarly, you can rate, you know, your visibility, how much visibility you have there, you know, what access you have, you know, uh, any overlapping with the country, you know, any crime rate, very important. You know, in Brazil, I never knew. I thought Brazil is also all good. You know, it's all good. I never knew the crime rate over there is high. So when you measure all this and you take an average, okay, once you take an average, you can come to a conclusion as to when you're going to launch something, at what risk are you? If it is red, you better be cautious. I stop when I see a red signal. I would not go because I know if I go there, I'm going to get bumped. Similarly, when you see something red, you got to stop. You got to stop and see, okay, there's something serious here, right? So there are actions again here which says, you know, there could be harassment, you know, there could be discrimination, threat, you know, serious. So you need support. You need to promote ally presence. So basically, when it's red, that doesn't mean you give up. You need to start sensitizing. You need to create a small culture, get it to yellow, get it to green, and there you go, right? Similarly, when you're in yellow, you're dicey. It's like on a wall. You can fall here, you can fall there. So yellow, you need to understand, you know, what is the chances of equality we have here, you know? How do you do it? You've got to do some networking, you've got to do more communication, more activities, and gain more visibility, you know, those kind of things, you know. Suddenly you can't just bring a bell and say that, chalo, we launch Pride. No, you have to work in a stepwise manner. And then you are, if you're green, you're not stopping. You're going to continue doing the same, just the way I am doing. I know it's nighttime. I know I got to go to bed, but I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to voice out and say that I am green. I want to ensure everybody is green. So you need to collect. I want to ensure that everybody, you know, everybody has a Pride chapter and everybody is there. They get the support just to be yourself. That's it. It's as simple as it is. So make notes of this and go launch your Pride chapters and share your success story for 2021.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane.
Go ahead. So Angel, yours is next. So.
Thank you. So now that you have done your assessment on your respective office, I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about how you can build the business case and launch your chapter in those locations. So when it comes to building a business case and selling the idea of why is it important to launch an ERG or a BRG in those locations, here's a template that you can use as a reference. Now, of course, it's subject to change depending on your particular needs, but it's just an idea that you can use as a baseline. So keep in mind that we'll be sharing this afterwards with all of you in the file section, right, Sean? So you will have access to this template so you can use. Some key points that I wanted to introduce or to talk about, it's first, define your project overview. Like really, you need to make sure that it's clear, that you have a clear view and of what you're trying to accomplish. Make sure that you have a project owner that could be accountable for the launching and the project overall until it's completed. A very good suggestion is always to have an executive sponsor, someone that can help you bring in this message to a higher level in the region or the office. Also define realistic phases and goals. Like if you see in the upper part, there are different phases, there are different goals. Same in the milestones. Like always try to make sure that you define and keep track of your milestone and accomplishments based on timelines. Okay. So things like connecting with your global team at the very beginning of the launch, or identify local HR people that you can talk to, or site leads, it's very critical. And a very strong suggestion, you don't have to wait for for these team members to get in touch. Get in touch with you. Instead, you can go ahead and start a conversation from the United States, from North America. Like, hey, we want to do this. How do we make it happen? Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you use things like anonymous survey so you can kind of sense and gain interest from the team members in the location. And then at some point you will be even able to build a core team that can help you with this. Remember that you're not alone in this one. There's most of the time there's always a group of people that want to contribute. And last but not least, as part of the milestone and accomplishment, is communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's very important. That's very critical. You need to make sure that everybody is aware that you're working on this and that this is something that will be launched at some point. Okay. And then when it comes to goals, let me just give you this checklist. So when it comes to goals, make sure that they are clear and they're defined and achievable based on your location assessment. They don't have to happen all together. They can be progressively accomplished. They can be progressive. For example, you can set up different goals based on 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, something that you can work on locally. And you can go from the simple things like developing a clear mission of what the movement is or the chapter is, and things like take LGBTQ plus discrimination very serious, and then kind of move forward from there, like create ERGs or development group or programs within your company, empower allies, empower senior staff or executive staff to promote this identify and work and support local communities, and of course make sure that you replicate things like benefits packages in those locations. And you have to go all the way through things like foster a gender neutral environment, a trans friendly environment where they get all the support that you need. And the great thing is that with this template and this checklist, you can use this to present to your executive, core team members, not only to have a more structured project, but also to request feedback, get feedback on things that can be improved and things that can be adapted to the goal that you have, and make sure that the goals are realistic and aligned with your D&I vision. That's very important. You normally have a global vision, and make sure that you identify how you can contribute. So with that, I will pass it over to Nikki, who will be telling us a little bit about our goals, our D&I vision and our goals, and how we can support them.
Thank you, Angel. All right, so you all hopefully heard at the plenary session this morning when Brian Reeves, our Chief Diversity Officer, when he shared a little bit about our moonshot goals. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that right now. We won't spend a ton of time going over this. We did have a workshop yesterday, so maybe you all can go back and listen to that one because it goes into a little bit more detail. Sean or Angel, I'm sorry, could you advance to the next slide? Thank you. So we have set goals for 2030, and one of them is how are we going to continue to cultivate inclusion? So how are we going to attract the workforce? future workforce rather. How are we going to retain and develop our current workforce? And then how are we going to scale for maximum impact? So how are we going to ensure that the talent that we have at Dell, how are we going to scale them and use them, use our talent internally as well as externally? Next slide, please. So when you look at our goals, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to read these, but the high points that you'll see here is by 2030, 25% of our workforce will be people, 25 of our U.S. workforce, and 15%, I get that one confused so many times, will be people leaders who identify as Black or African American and Hispanic and Latino minorities. We will also have impact goals, or goals rather, that support hiring initiatives with respect to female and female leaders within our organization. Now, when you think about how does an ERG actually play a role in this, that's what I want to talk to you all about most specifically. So how can an employee resource group support a company when they have goals such as these? So next slide, please. Okay, so from an employee resource group standpoint, where you can play a role in helping your company support diversity and inclusion hiring metrics is really to make sure that you are engaging your team members internally, that you are developing your future leaders of the company, and that you're creating and ensuring that there's a workplace culture where people want to come and work. So for us, as leaders within Pride, we don't necessarily have a moonshot goal around attracting talent from an LGBTQ community. But what we do have are goals around attracting other minority organizations. So how do we impact that with intersectionality and ensuring that we are engaging and meeting with folks who identify within the LGBTQ community. So it's partnering with our talent acquisition organization and visiting colleges and universities, participating in career fairs, out there evangelizing about why our company is such a great company to come work for, and sharing our stories and what accomplishments that we've made as leaders within Pride, and helping our company with different things like policies, writings, and making sure that practices are where they need to be, and that we're engaging with leaders in our communities where we have sites to make sure that we're creating workplaces where people want to come to work and where they want to thrive. So this is just one way that employee resource groups play a role in helping to support your company from a D&I standpoint. So like I said, I didn't go into great detail around the moonshot goals. We do have a social impact report that's published. We published it early this year. Again, Brian Reeves talked about them this morning. And then we also have the workshop from yesterday. So please check out the workshop from yesterday. We had support and participation from our leaders within D&I and talent acquisition, who talked in great detail around some of the things that we're doing as a company to ensure that we're meeting our goals.
Great. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to talk about how global companies can make a difference. So Maros, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. So the upcoming 4 slides will not be that busy in terms of text and content, but they will surely be very generous in nice visuals, right? So how to make a difference. Now we are going to talk a bit, but just very briefly, around the models or stages that you may already heard of. This is gonna maybe help you with evaluating the company that you are working at, or maybe other companies, about what stage they're at, right? So this is basically, and what's underlining what's the baseline in here is that when in Rome, embassy and advocate is some kind of path for a company to go through, if the company is deciding towards positive representation of LGBTQ community. So we took this one and we were inspired by the Center of Diversity, Inclusion and Belongings.
We are coming up with the 3 models. You may heard in theory there may be 2 of them, there may be 4. I've heard also about 16 of them, but we wanted to give you an overview on how to use it. For example, this is also helpful for myself because now when I'm negotiating with the guys from Poland, right, or the potential pride leaders from Poland, I would maybe start with When in Rome. So let's go to When in Rome slide, please. Yeah, so When in Rome is basically the model for you or for those countries and societies which are not really open or even very unfriendly towards LGBTQ plus people and LGBTQ plus rights. It's the common and the baseline for this approach is to allow people forming communities in a way, but making sure that that they are not getting the company and also the individuals working for the company are not being hurt by maybe possible or significant legal or safety risks. The model is saying something very, very useful, and it's the concept of allyship. I know that mainly in the countries where pride chapters are established for quite a long time, this is often the concept that is being forgotten. But in the companies or in the pride chapters or ERGs, BRGs that are working in or functioning in quite unfriendly environment, it's a basic thing to do to initiate or the discussion around allyship, because people who are afraid or for some other reason cannot really come out as LGBTQ plus can identify as allies and join such initiatives and still can join your events. Then other thing is to raise awareness. This is also a very nice piece to mention, right? If we are talking about diversity and inclusion boards, we are talking about general diversity and inclusion topics, and this can stay and be labeled like that. So you still can keep the safety of the people that are working for the company that you are evaluating in mind, and at the same time still allow a bit of room for forming LGBTQ plus communities. Then the use of technology is one of the significant ones. A lot of tools are helping us staying anonymous in a way. In a lot of experiences from APJ, also from Europe, we may see that the technology was used to inform the people individually and anonymously, and then help them kind of acquire information and being part of the community, even though they didn't need to come out, which is a crucial matter for this slide. We can have the next slide, please. Embassy model is something that I'm seeing from my own perspective. I'm seeing this this is kind of a regular thing for myself when I'm talking about the companies that are already a part of some diversity forums and so on. So, but the baseline in here is that the company can work towards the inclusive environment already, but maybe for some reason it's not really about the external relations at its fullest, right? So strengthening the ERGs in this case is the best thing that you can do. ERGs are the communities of people that if you would help them or let them having some voice in the executive part of the D&I strategies and D&I policies in your site, it can help you foster the communities and foster the LGBTQ topics, and they will rise on their own. So you need to strategize a lot about it. That's a great thing around this. Then we are getting to the external factor, but not in terms of promotion that much, but forging external coalitions is mainly talking about having partnerships, right? The great partnerships that we heard of in all of the regions can all of them be the example of this. But forging such partnership is not an easy task in all the environments. The best thing to do is to find out what are the forums, the professional or business forums talking about diversity or LGBTQ plus topic, and have a representative there. It's easy as that. That would be the first step, maybe from my point of view. Engaging in advocacy is a totally different thing. You can also in the embassy model, you can also find very interesting in terms of internal promotion. To have a knowledge, right?
to have that in on leadership levels, to have that awareness being built up around the actual advocacy and the actual stories that the people face in their real lives. Engage in advocacy means that the company can reach out to other external partners, to other partners, even maybe abroad, right? And try to come up with a strategy to unify the approach to LGBTQ people and kind of to get the good practice. We can get a next slide, please. Advocate. Advocate is mainly common in friendly places, from my experience, but or moderate to friendly places. It can also be applied to quite challenging locations, right? We've got a great example of Israel, for example, in here in EMEA. The environment is challenging by its nature, right? There might be some ray of hopes and flanks of rainbow somewhere, but still the environment in general is quite challenging. But Dell Technologies in Israel is definitely advocate because they are reaching out externally and they are trying to make a positive change for people, right? This is not an easy task to do. And this is not something, and that may be the reason why we are not seeing that many companies being advocates as we wish to see, because reaching such stage requires a lot of energy, but not just that. It's very, very crucial decision to make from the standpoint of the company to be advocate and to try to sustain real change. There are many great examples how companies, as their self-actors, reached out to local authorities, or they funded pride marches that were prohibited by the government or something like that. So it's there's a lot of inspiration even around us and even in the world globally that we might be looking at here. So thank you. That would be all for me.
Thank you very much, Maras. That was amazing. So want to give you all, we've got enough time. I'm going to thank you all, the presenters, for presenting such amazing content. We're going to open up for a little bit of Q&A session. I've been monitoring all of the different methods. So I think I've got a couple of good questions that we can start with. And then if you still have more questions, please put them in the chat or the poll and we'll try to see what we can get to. I know we're getting up against the closing session, so I want to make sure we give people enough time to get to that as well. There was a question that asked, that said, is there a map of the Middle East and Africa? They say, my assumption is no, it's basically all red. I'm going to take that one because I think the reason we didn't have that on ours is we don't have a Pride chapter there yet. So the leaders looked at where they had existing chapters, but I think if we were to use that same methodology to start looking at other locations, we would do the exact same kind of process. So I just went ahead and answered that one. Then there's a question around, a couple of questions that were around, how do you get around local laws if there are countries that have outright laws that make being LGBTQIA+ illegal? And there was another question that kind of, how do you, I'm going to mix them together, and then how do you kind of gauge the local culture compared to the scorecard? So how do you include that in there? So for part of that, I want to ask Shane, I want you to, can you talk to us a little bit about how India was launched? Because I think that's a great example of working in an environment where it was illegal, but how you were able to launch before the decriminalization of 377.
Great. So happy to answer this question because it was the same assumption we had, saying that local laws, but we never knew what your corporate strength was. See, end of the day, you want to come to a workplace where you're accepted. And if your corporate laws and your global policy supports you, then you don't care what happens outside. You're so happy to be at work because here you are more protected, you're more accepted. And that's exactly what, that our global leaders, informed that your local laws has nothing to do with your own corporate policy, because we are not, you launching a Pride chapter doesn't mean that you're going to make a change in section 377. you're not making a change in your federal law or your local laws. You're just making your workplace a better place. And that's exactly what we did. And that is what we made our leaders understand, that we just want the employee who's joining work to be themselves. And we are okay with it. And if we are okay with it, then that's it. So that is how we were able to make them understand the difference between corporate policies and local laws are different, because we're not going to go out and shout, out on the streets there. We're just trying to make our work culture, a better place, and a place where we all are, we can be ourselves. And that's how we were able to convince our leaders and launch the Pride chapter before we had 377, and luckily now it doesn't exist, but that's how it is. So if you're having, and the basic thing here we also did here is very important, is first start with a remote chapter. And unfortunately, we all are doing remote chapters only right now. So that's how it is. So when you're connecting remotely, who will stop you? So and that gives you more strength. And when you launch something, you have people spread awareness, you'll have people joining, build allyship. I'm so happy to say that in India, we have an ally who leads an India chapter. That's great for us, So that's how it is, You need to make your networking, build strong allies, and form that core group, that is ready to answer, spread awareness, and do the magic.
Thank you, Shane. That was perfect. And I think one of the other things, as the global lead, this question gets asked a lot. I mean, kind of how do you create this environment when maybe it's not safe internally? One, you have to create the safe space, and you don't ask people to do more than they feel safe to do, right? So I think that's an important concept that we should keep in mind. Angel, I'm going to ask you, kind of pivot on that same kind of question about the understanding the local culture. And kind of really making sure you understand, even if the let's say the laws are okay, but the culture is a little bit still more conservative. Is there any advice you would give? I know from a LATAM perspective in particular, I'd ask you that question.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think one of the main actions that we can take of that is definitely work on the education and awareness actions externally. We have a very strong, safe place strategy internally, but I think one of the things that has caused a major impact is our collaboration externally. Working with government entities, working with other nonprofit organizations that have that they work. This is part of their day-to-day. They create spaces externally for society, for people in different from different views to get together and discuss and align. What will be what is the need that we have. And I think it comes from that, and also from the empowerment of our leaders. Every single person that has participated at some point in our core teams in Pride, it's also an activist externally. They are also part of a local organization. They also do presentations and volunteer work. So we really make sure that they are empowered to bring and spread the message through society. We obviously are very respectful. We understand that there are obviously situations where religious concepts or views will represent a difference of criteria at some point. So we obviously keep it very respectful at that point, and we try to focus on the impact from a private perspective, from a legal perspective, and from a social perspective.
Excellent. Let's see. I've got another question here. And either of you can answer this. In creating the heat map of the rights that you did how did you come up with the categories and areas? Was there a list that you started with and then finally came down to, or was this an existing list that you started from? And were there things that you took off of the list? Angel, I'm gonna throw that to you because I think you have a lot more experience with that.
You mean for the assessment that we presented? Yeah, so this is actually an assessment that, let me first of all clarify that this is not necessarily a Dell exclusive thing. This is actually something that has been going on in different locations, countries, organizations, and companies. What we did today was pretty much just consolidate some of the information that we were able to find that we thought will be useful for you. And the criteria are basically all the different points that will at some level create any sort of social risk, or from a team member perspective or from a company perspective. And again, this is very adaptable. Like this is not necessarily something that will be written in stone. Like this is this way or the highway. You know, at the end of the day, what we want is that you take this and you adapt it to whatever situation will be happening in your country.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Nikki, I'm going to ask this question to you. There was a question about the 4 pillars that you discussed. Kind of, we have the 4 pillars. The question was, is the 4-pillar model the same thing as having a mission statement?
No, the 4-pillar model, it kind of, the relation to our mission statement, I think, is what's important. So it's actually how we get our work done as far as an ERG. In the 4-pillar model, it's important to know that that's across every employee resource group at Dell. We are all focused on the same 4 pillars, but it's what we do in those initiatives that makes us unique in our employee resource groups. So the pillars are professional development, business innovation, team member experience, and community and advocacy. So community engagement and advocacy. So within those pillars is where we actually have all of our initiatives that we are measured on as an employee resource group. It's really how are we rating against that return on investment. So at Dell, our company really invests in employee resource groups. We are very empowered. We are encouraged to get involved and support the unique natures of what our employee resource groups do or what we're charged with. And so we have initiatives that help us with how we're going to do that, and then we are rated on how we do that. So it's kind of like a performance metric for an individual contributor, but more broadly across an employee resource group.
Excellent. Thanks, Nikki. And I think we have time for one more question. And then there was a question in the chat from Paul that was asking, regarding what Shane is saying now, which is what she was saying earlier, is there a risk sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so this is going to be fun. Is there a risk, though, that a local colleague might out someone outside of the workplace and create problems from them outside of work? Did that come up in your legal considerations? So I want to ask Shane if you can address that question.
As of now, we have not come across a situation like this. I would say because of the strong global policy that we have. First things I would say, as I stated in the very beginning, you need to have a global policy. When you have a global policy, you communicate. So your communication should be so strong that when you have any employee who's joining your company, they go through the induction and ensure your induction is nothing but your introduction to companies' terms and policies, where you educate and sensitize this topic. It's not all about, about your salary, your holiday policy, your leave policy. It's very important that you also include this in your induction so that every employee knows how important it is to respect one another, because that's something that the company follows. That is first. Secondly, if you are in a country where you know that there's a risk, like because of the law, we don't want everyone who joined the Pride chapter, we don't want them to hold Pride tags and roam around the company. You have a discrete group. It's all about forming that community, a sense of belonging. You need to ensure that if the person feels that he or she is risk because of family or work pressure, you can still have them a part of your community, but you can keep them anonymous. Have that respect. For example, if I'm going to send an email, I put them all in BCC and it's not in CC. And so they are discreet. Still, they know, still they're part of the event. They're part of all the fun that we're having, and they're still discreet. So that's how you need to understand. So it's very important that you understand, how open is that person at workplace. If the person is a closet, you need to respect, but you still need to support. That doesn't mean if the person is closet, you don't want them to welcome in your chapter. You should have them because they are the ones who need you. and they're the ones who get bullied outside. But again, you need to respect that. And as I stated, if you keep on communicating, you have these kind of sessions. We have so many panel discussions that we have. We have drag queens, we have transgenders, we have lesbians who are on panels, who are sharing their personal story, building that emotional connect so that they can respect one another in the end of the day. And had it all been green, you and I would not be having this conversation. So that's how we need to tackle it.
Very good. Thank you so much, Shane. That's all the time we have. I think I want to give everyone a little bit of time to get ready for the final closing plenary. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Angel, Nikki, Maros, Shane, all of you who attended. I hope this was helpful. We will be uploading the files to the site, the Pathable site. I also want to encourage all of you to please, if you provide us some feedback through the survey that's on the Pathable site. That's extremely valuable information. Please feel free to reach out to us. We provided you our contact information here on the screen, and it will be on the file. We're always available. If there's questions that you'd like us to continue to ask, please reach out. With that, I want to thank you all, and I hope you had a great summit and a great webinar, and we will hopefully see you again soon. So thank you.
Bye.